Tell me the legends, O spirit of the land, of that virtuous brother with gods at his side, a compassionate young monk who ended the great floods. Reports of you's journey spread far and wide. As the lonely moon's eyes probed the earth once more, a festive fishing village came into her sight near the brink and border the wild eastern sea, where a valiant hero arrived in the night. Wafting food scents permeated an air already thick in joyous celebration. Inviting food stalls beckoned for guests, and honest monk Yu began an exploration. As he paid for a portion of steamed pork dumplings, a lightning-quick hand snatched away his coin purse. Thus began a ferocious chase, in which the monk and thief ran a great race. Through lantern-lit alleys and crowded streets, the humble monk pursued his swift-footed quarry. Finally, he halted at the menacing doors of a rowdy gambling house, full of loud, boisterous roars. Reluctantly, the hero entered the dubious dwelling where mahjong, dice, and card games stirred up the air. Approaching the thief in the midst of a game, "Return that purse, sir," demanded Yu with a stare. "How about a wager?" growled the sly thief, and the honest monk found himself surrounded by hostiles. "Win our bet and we'll return your purse, but lose and prepare yourself to face the very worst." Wary but determined, our hero accepted the challenge. "Odd," guessed the humble monk with a silent prayer. 6 and 6 made an even total of 12, and the valiant monk's expression turned dark with despair. But a sudden guest arrived to save the monk, a drunkard whose face was red with wine. "Scoundrels!" cried the great tipsy stranger. "Those dice are weighted, rigged, you swine!" He grabbed the dice, threw them on the floor, which again and again made an even 12 total. Outraged, the gamblers started to wail, looking for a fight when there's a fight he gave, that massive drunkard did, with the help of the monk, a martial art master himself. When they had finished, the place was wrecked. Not a single man standing was the battle's effect. Yu retrieved his money, but left all the rest. Making a hasty retreat, the monk resumed his great quest. He carried the drunkard who had passed out mid-fight. An abandoned shrine was their refuge that night. When the fighter awoke, humble Yu bid him thanks. "Someday for sure I'll return this huge favor. If our fates are connected, may we meet again. But farewell for now, and be safe, honored friend." As the compassionate monk prepared to set out, "Stop!" cried out the drunkard with a great shout. "Favor, you say, eh? Return it with a story, for I'm a bard, you see, and I love tales of glory." So as the still night listened, gentle Yu began his tale. "The Yellow River's flooding destroys villages each spring. With all of his power, the emperor tried everything, but the angry tears of the river continued its flow, for only the gods could conquer a river, you know." The compassionate ruler sought help from my temple. "I was sent on a quest to end the great floods. Tomorrow at sunrise the sea's where I'll go, to meet the fearsome Dragon King, a god of no foe." The wandering bard eagerly urged the monk on. "I know who you are now, you heroic monk of legend. All of China has heard news of your quest, and I admit that your story is one of the best." So valiant Yu began his tale once more. "Many places did I travel, many things did I see, but my first trial approached around the festive New Year. I came across a strange village, silent like no other, and the whole town was cloaked in a grim atmosphere." For every New Year's Eve gave terror to this village. In the form of a mountain beast called Nian, he ate the people and ravaged their crops. All the villagers hid at home and closed down their shops. I offered to help rid the town of the creature. The night before New Year, I held vigil alone. A chilly wind blew, so I lit a small flame. Bamboo leaves were rustling when the horrid beast came. Around midnight, I heard frightful roars down the mountains, and the dreadful cries came ever so close. But the beast did not attack me or even try to approach, for my fire had fiery bounds that he would never dare encroach. You see, that fearsome creature was afraid of crimson flame, so he dare not come close while I dare not doze off. All night long the great brute prowled about, and among the bamboo I saw his red eyes and hairy snout. Constantly I fed more fuel to the blaze, but my wood supply began to run thin, and in a panic I chopped up the stalks of bamboo and tossed wood into the fire with bamboo stems too. Sizzling with heat, the bamboo exploded with a bang, giving me a scare as I sprang up in fright. Obviously, Nian had been startled as well, for with a large whimper he slunk into the night. The next morning I returned to the village and told them of the horrible Nian's simple fear. Because loud noises and crimson would scare off the beast, at last the villagers held a New Year's feast. Besides preparing once more for festive celebration, the villagers covered their town with the fiery color red. On doors and windows hung strings of firecrackers to ward off evil spirits and that beastly Nian attacker. I left that village as they celebrated New Year and continued my passage towards the East Sea. On one of the village in which I stayed, I encountered a parade both depressed and dismayed. It was a bridal procession whose members all cried, as if part of a funeral in which someone had died. From a sobbing servant I curiously inquired after the gloomy nature of the wedding that transpired. The young lady of our house is to be sacrificed today as a bride to the wrathful river god despite our dismay. Years ago our village angered the god who cursed us with drought to make us pay. Our crops faced disaster when arrived the shaman, who claimed to be the messenger of the powerful river god. To appease the god, this crafty witch said, "You must offer the river a bride to be wed." The top officials of our miserable village taxed all workers day and night, and with that they paid the shaman large handsome fee to end the drought by whatever means necessary. Every year a new maiden is sacrificed, but still our desperate village has received no rain. This year the sorceress chose our house's young lady as the ill-fated bride of the water god's domain. Our young lady is the most kind and beautiful maiden in the village, and capricious river god will surely accept her as his bride. To save our village, she has resigned herself to her fate. It's either watery death or the river god's mate. As it marched towards the river, I followed the mournful procession. Finally, they stopped where the greedy witch awaited and faced the vengeful river, whose deity they hated. "Oh, mighty river god, accept this humble offering," chanted the cruel sorceress as the miserable villagers wailed. "I, your faithful agent, plead an end to the drought, for this time we promise a suitable bride without doubt." As they prepared to send the girl in the water, I could no longer stay still. "Stop!" I cried out loudly. "This bride will go to waste, for how are we to know if she fits the river god's taste?" "Nonsense!" snapped the angry witch. "I selected her myself." "So did you choose the previous brides, yet the land of the village is still cracked and dried. You claim to be the envoy of the mighty river god? Why don't we send you down to his court to ask him what maiden he prefers as consort?" Despite the unscrupulous shaman's shrill, angry screeches, the angry mob of villagers heard the sense in my speech. They tied the cursing witch onto the bride's palanquin chair and sank her into the river, watching the last bubbles reach the air. With no messenger of the gods, the restless villagers turned to me for advice. "Humble monk, what shall we do, now that we know that the shaman was a scheming sly shrew? Although our young lady was saved, what will now become of our village?" I told them of my quest to conquer the Yellow River and made a promise to the discouraged villagers that water would be delivered. With many a thanks, the village sent me on my way, and at last I reached the coast of the Eastern Sea. "It is here I met you," finished off the monk, "and your superb fighter despite being drunk." The bard reclined back, still lost in the monk's tale. "Tomorrow at dawn I wish to come with you, good monk, for I want to see the Dragon King and aid your quest too. I'm a wandering bard who lives for the legends. Who am I to refuse when adventures beckon?" In the morning the moon goddess returned to her palace, and the two unlikely companions rowed out to sea. From the watery desert a great wave swelled high, sinking the two helpless companions into a world with no sky. The monk and the bard were astounded to find that they could breathe and see as if on land. They were pushed by the water into unimaginable depths, and at last they reached the ocean's white floor of sand. Here they saw the Dragon King's grand palace, colorful beyond description, filled with glittering fish. The cunning old dragon met the heroes in his court, an ancient crafty serpent, he was the slippery stork. Ah, you silly souls! It is in vain that I've come all this way. Although I should probably reign in that river, I just feel too lazy these days. The human world can suffer a bit while I take my vital rest. The duties of a god are demanding, and of late I feel so stressed. No. Voice dripping with condescension, the sly king did concede. But mortals are known for never backing down, so I'll give you one chance to succeed. He pointed at the great pillar in the center of the White Hall. This is my generous gift to you, if you can guess its powers at all. Now trouble me no longer and leave before the sunrise. The two travelers stared up at his useless gift with dejected and hopeless eyes. Those foolish mortals, thought the serpentine lord. Never will they guess the pillar's power, but now the Jade Emperor can't put any blame on me for never answering a mortal's plea. From a strange dream, honest you learned the answer to the giant pillar's strange power. In his reveries stood a simian frame. It was the Monkey King of legend and fame. This is not a pillar, explained the beloved monkey god, but an ancient staff, the extraordinary compliant rod. Its size will vary on your command, so wake up, great champions, and take a stand. The monk sat up from his dream with a start. At last he and the bard were ready to depart. Shrink to half my height, directed the monk, and the ocean floor thundered as the enormous rod shrunk. Clinging onto its side, the friends ordered the rod to grow. As it broke the ocean surface, the rod crushed the palace below. The ancient Dragon King woke with a great roar as his magnificent ocean residence crumbled to the floor. But trapped within the ruins of his palace, the cunning dragon could only watch as his mortal enemy sped at last towards the blue sky and white shore. From the coastal fishing village, compassionate Yu began his return. How to maximize the Grot's great power was his only concern. Through days of hard, long travel, Yu's mind ran like a wheel. He would stop the river's flooding with his will of steel. At last, he reached the imperial city where he told the emperor his plan, to create a new course for the river to distribute water to dry land. The noble emperor immediately set workers on the construction of new river courses. With the powerful size-changing compliant rod, Yu measured their depths and forces. At last, when the flooding season did arrive, all construction was complete. The raging Yellow River was finally conquered, ending the floods was great Yu's heroic feat.